We are very delighted to welcome all of you this morning and this afternoon. My name is Felix Brücher and I welcome you from Hamburg in Germany. With me today on this event is Dr. Frauke Schmitz-Bauerdick from Germany Trade and Invest, the agency which helps you export and provides information for investors from all around the world. And Markus Leichum, financing expert and the head of the Competence Center for German export finance at the Chamber of Commerce in Singapore. To both of you, a very warm welcome. Great to have you with us again on this online event. And of course, a very warm welcome to our guests from all around the world. We are delighted to have you here. And as always, we appreciate your questions, your remarks. You can just ask them in the chat box on the right-hand side of your panel. But without further ado, I would like to turn it over to Frauke, who is the director for Vietnam of Germany Trade and Invest. As I said, Germany Trade and Invest is the agency of the Federal Republic supporting German exporters and foreign investors locating business in Germany and exporting from Germany. Okay, the floor is yours. We are eager to hear what your expertise is saying regarding the ASEAN region. Okay.
So, thanks a lot, Felix. It's my pleasure to be here with you today, with all of you. Like we said earlier, I talk too much, you just let me know, okay? So let's get right into it. I will talk to you today about ASEAN. Especially about in my view, most interesting countries in ASEAN right now, that is Indonesia and Vietnam. The whole region has been ravaged sooner or later by COVID-19, and of course that is something we cannot ignore because it did have economic perturbances for some countries more than others. Let's start right away. The quick overview over ASEAN. You might know ASEAN is a very big region and a very diverse region, culturally, politically, but also economically. In fact, I would like to divide it into three big groups. We have first group is the least developed countries, Laos, Cambodia, and Myanmar. That's right now, you know, it all ravaged by kind of civil war. These are countries trying to catch up with having difficulties. Then we have the countries I like to call the old tigers because they were very well off 30 years ago, Thailand and Malaysia. They started and entered into electronics and cars and did really well, but right now, yeah, they're turning old and they seem to be trapped right now in this famous middle income trap. Then we have the three other countries that I'd like to call the young tigers that are really starting right now, especially we have the Philippines, Indonesia, and Vietnam, and especially Vietnam and Indonesia, two very interesting markets right now. If we look at the population, Indonesia is by far the biggest country in ASEAN. Well, it's the fourth biggest country in the world with around 250 million residents, inhabitants. Such the GDP share of Indonesia in ASEAN is really big. I didn't talk about Singapore earlier on. It's this very small. It's this city with about 6 million residents, but having a share of 11% of GDP of all ASEAN members. So imagine a country with 6 million people equals the GDP of the Philippines with 110 million people. That's immense. So we will not talk about Singapore today because it's not interesting for production, for exports maybe, but not for production. If we look at GDP per capita, that's sometimes more interesting, that share of GDP or the general GDP. Malaysia and Thailand, they reached European levels, levels of Singapore and Bulgaria. But countries like Philippines, Vietnam, and Indonesia, they are still on a level of around 6 to 10% of the German GDP per capita. So there's really some catching up to do, even though these countries are doing quite well. COVID-19 has ravaging the region for a long time in different ways, because there were different ways the countries entered or handled COVID-19. Thailand and Vietnam were fighter for zero COVID. Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, they work differently. Indonesia especially has been ravaged several times by the pandemics. We see that at the growth data, Thailand was suffering a lot because tourism wasn't possible anymore because they closed the borders. Vietnam, in fact, was one of the only countries, not only in ASEAN, but in Asia, that grew last year. China grew a little bit stronger, and Taiwan grew with around 3.0%. So Vietnam is one of the few countries in the world who got through the crisis last year really very, very well. Well, this year it's doing as well. Growth rates, our prognosis for next year are still well, interesting. They used to be better. Everybody expected, the end of last year, expected better growth rates throughout the region, but we didn't take into account that there would be a Delta variant. That really changed a lot. Let's take a look at Indonesia, how they were doing COVID-wise. Well, they did not so well all the time. That's why they didn't grow last year, or even, well, when the economy went down. They started very well off first half, second, especially the second quarter was very strong, growth rate of around 7%. But then there came Delta, then we had this July, August COVID wave. Everything had to close down again, lockdowns in Jakarta, especially in Java and Bali. Vaccinations rates, especially in Java and Bali, still kind of good, but there's a lot of hesitancy. People, what has been vaccinated mainly has been Sinopharm and Sinovac, as far as I know, the two Chinese vaccines. People, they rely a lot on social media. There's a lot of rumors on social media, not all from Germany. Nowadays, the corona wave in Jakarta has been slowed down. Our services, restaurants are opening up again, but still it's been hard on the economy. Outside of Jakarta, it's still difficult. Well, you can imagine Indonesia is a country of around 17,000 islands. How do you want to reach all these people with very volatile vaccines? So even if you can say Java and Bali will be back to kind of normal. In 2022, we will see about that, in the rest of Indonesia. Tourism is still down, will stay down. That's not good for these parts that are depending on it. I've got a colleague in Jakarta who's doing the same thing I'm doing, like economic reporting from Jakarta for Indonesia and the whole ASEAN region. Normally he would have been here, but it's kind of, we put a little focus on Vietnam as well. So it's me who's talking today. He said economic recovery is delayed to 22, so not much hope for 21. GDP growth remains slow, and what's worse, business confidence remains low. That means no investment, no hiring of new staff. Things are really going not too well. Private consumption is low. That's dramatic in a country that used to have a general GDP growth rate of 5% all these last years. And GDP growth in consumption, GDP growth was furthered by consumption. 50% of GDP was made up by private consumption. But now, with all these closures, with especially informal workers out of job, it's really hard. People cannot buy. They do not know what the future will bring, so they do not invest. They, like in Germany last year, they put, if they had the possibility, put money on their side, and the other just had to spend the money to live on. Government response has been, well, they invested a lot. They had to invest a lot in health and in social support packages, but that is heavy on the state finances. That means that really necessary and essential infrastructure programs that were planned for 21 and 22 Nobody knows whether they will go on the way they plan. You all heard about this huge project of relocating Jakarta, or the capital, not all of Jakarta, to Kalimantan. Well, there hasn't been a lot of talk about that lately, even though the newspapers were reporting that these plans are still on. We'll see about that. It would be like huge investments, several billions. Of course, a lot of opportunities for German enterprises, but we'll see about that. Good thing is there are new investment regulations, like Indonesia is. I've been working with Indonesia the last 20 years because I've been doing legal regulations. Before that, I was in the legal center of the Germany Trade and Invest. And to be true, I didn't like Indonesia from a legal point of view. It's complicated. It's complicated, it's restrictive for investors, and it's restrictive for exporters. Free trade is not something that's really furthered by the Indonesian government or by the Indonesian business community. So it's really difficult to export, and now it's getting a bit easier because investment regulations has been a little bit eased. Still, we have to wait what this is going to bring. Still, it's a huge market, so it's an interesting market. You shouldn't let Indonesia out of your view. We switch to Vietnam. Vietnam is different. They have a different, not only political, but economic political orientation. They are very free trade oriented. They are very foreign direct investment orientated, very liberal investment regime. Well, they have their problems as well, but it was always good doing business, especially last year. Borders were completely closed. Borders are still closed. It's extremely difficult to get in. I came back after summer. I stayed 4 weeks in quarantine. Now I am in like hard lockdown, only allowed to go out to go shopping, essential items. Everything is closed anyway. But 2020, everything looked different. April, May, like all over the world, everything was closed, but then life turned back to normal very quickly. That's why the country could continue the way it did. Only thing that was missing was tourism, but domestic tourists, local people, growing income class, they love to travel, so they went anywhere. Things were not that bad. 21, there came the Delta variant, and they hit a country that wasn't prepared, that thought they had conquered the virus. And very unexpectedly, Delta ravaged, especially, and is still ravaging, especially the south, the industrial south of Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh City, Long An, Binh Nhung, Dom Nai. All these provinces are right now severely hurt by COVID, with infection rates of 11,000 people per day. Hanoi is kind of well off right now. They test a lot, but 40 infections per day. That's what we had the last week. I hope that this lockdown in Hanoi will be pushed away. We don't know about that. Ho Chi Minh City is still really bad. Problem was, government thought, well, everybody thought that they had conquered the virus. They didn't have vaccines, and they were developing their own vaccine. They said, okay, we can do it on our own. Well, problem is, with all these lockdowns and restrictions on production, restriction on movements, there are no inbound, there are no flights in the country anymore, no domestic flights. There's one flight from Ho Chi Minh City to Hanoi each day. That's all. That was the busiest or second busiest air route of the world last year. So right now, nothing is happening, and you cannot go by street. It's 3,000 kilometers from 2,000 kilometers from Ho Chi Minh City to Hanoi, but there are a lot of roadblock cars, and you simply cannot enter because of quarantine restrictions and everything. Last year did well. We heard about that. Still, the numbers from January to August 21 still look kind of good, especially exports taking off at 21.2%. Well, we have to admit it was a low base rate last year, so it doesn't count as much. Retail is down, especially because tourism is completely down. But if we look at the numbers in August 21 over August 20, that's dramatic. And that is something I haven't seen these 5 years. It was always like other way around. It was double-digit growth everywhere, retail, exports. Well, not GDP, but everything was going up very FDI. Everything was going up at a pace you haven't seen in Germany for like after the Second World War, maybe. It was really exploding, and went down. Everything in August is down, and especially with the southern key economic region, Ho Chi Minh City, Long An, Binh Nhung, being hampered. It's the GDP motor of the country. 45% of GDP has been produced in the Southern Key Economic Region in 2019, 2020. So all these production sites being closed, it hampers the economy a lot, and it hampers Germany as well. You will see it. Maybe you've been out trying to get some sneakers from Nike or Adidas or whatever. It's really difficult right now in Vietnam. And why is that? Well, production sites in Vietnam aren't producing anymore, and it's going to be worse if because September lockdowns are still going on. Production is very low. So everything that isn't produced right now will not be in Germany for Christmas. Maybe you should carry on your everything you want to buy to next March. While business sentiment apparently is low, it has really been that down. Well, nothing to do. If I look at different sectors, it's looking not good. Even medtech that was exploding last 2 years, all the last years, not last year. Everything is pushing back. Not necessary procedures. Nobody's going to the doctor because you can get infected there. Only thing that are still developing is food and beverages, because only thing people still do is eat and drink. And especially energy. Normally, energy consumption rose 10 to 11% year on year. So they really need new energy outlets, and they are diversifying a little bit from coal, that is the main source of energy, to renewable energies. And that's really good for German exporters, German enterprises, because Germany is strong in renewable energies. Now it's especially wind that's being promoted. Ways out. Hope is that COVID will be reined in after mid-September, while Ho Chi Minh City will be later than that. We are hoping that Hanoi is going to open up as soon as end of September, a little bit. Well, like, would be nice to get a carry-on from restaurant one day again. Vaccinations are really taking up speed. A lot of people in Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City, around 90%, have had their first shot of AstraZeneca. Everybody wants to be vaccinated, being pregnant, being scared, everybody wants to be vaccinated. Right now they're vaccinating people over 18, and they will keep on vaccinating as soon as they have enough vaccines in the country. And what's more, public investment. Let's see, the state didn't have to finance a lot of social programs last year because they didn't have problems. So they have still money. They will invest in infrastructure programs, especially for the international donors. And private consumers, we have a growing middle income class with growing, who's consuming more and more value. And they didn't lose that much right now. And what is extremely important, Vietnam is going to be an important part in the global value chain. China Plus One 4.0. Well, this China Plus One, people extending their production from China to Vietnam, has been a trend since, especially it's been talked about for 10 years, but it's been really realizing these last 2 years, starting with the trade wars, China trade war, and with the last COVID year, and especially free trade agreements. We all know about the EU-Vietnam free trade agreement that is opening up trade between the two regions. And Vietnam needs to invest because there are a lot of problems, lack of supplying industry, dependency on important input. If they want to produce for a developed market like the US or the EU or Australia or Japan, they need to be able to produce in a way that's compatible with international norms and international quality. So they need to invest in machinery and equipment, in management and technical know-how to further their own research and development, and especially in sustainable production and environmental technology, because to be honest, Vietnam is having more and more economic environmental problems day by day. These 5 years I've been here, I've seen a lot of environmental degradation from water, from air, from plastics, from everything. They need to do a lot, and production has to be more sustainable if Vietnam doesn't want to be the waste hole of the world. That's all I want to say today. I talked a lot, but if you have any questions, just let me know. And Felix, you can further everything you need to do. There are questions, you just ask them. Thanks.
All right. Thank you very much, Frauke. This was extremely interesting. So you can see that Germany Trade and Invest is providing unparalleled information, intelligence, and insight to you. One of the key takeaways for me is, of course, to think about Christmas shopping early. Usually, I would do that maybe on the 23rd. I don't know whether my daughters will be too happy if I come around the corner with some handicraft. But we'll see about that.
Yeah, toys are affected as well because Vietnam has been one of the biggest toys producers of the world the last year as well, of course, after China. So go shopping right away. Order on Amazon. Yeah.
I have some issues with the sound at the moment. I hope you can still understand me all right. Yeah, seems to be the case. All right. So I just wanted to underline if you have any questions, you can put them into the chat box, and you can of course always reach out to our colleagues and friends from Germany Trade and Invest. There are more than 400 people helping German exporters and of course foreign investors finding the right place in the market. Let's have a look at the guarantees that the German government provided to exporters in 2019 and 2020. Markus and I will discuss this and then look at individual markets a little bit more in depth from the perspective from the perspective of export financing. As you can well suspect, China has been the biggest market for us in Asia. We see a steady stream of projects as well as small ticket investments which are financed through export financing. And it's interesting to see that we even increased the number from 2019 to 2020. The other markets which are interesting, of course, Indonesia, also with a increase. We have seen some medium and long-term projects there, and of course, sort of the sleeping giant in export finance, India, where we see the overall numbers are stronger in short term, meaning payments usually up to 180, under certain circumstances up to 360 days. Let's have a look at the individual markets. One of the rising stars, I would say, with a constant high volume of exports as well as a fairly high share of covered exports is Bangladesh. And maybe Markus, you can elaborate a little bit on what your perspective on Bangladesh is. I think you were there just before just prior to the lockdown, I guess.
Oh no, unfortunately not.
Okay, sorry.
We are more in Vietnam before the lockdown, but I would like to, before I dive into Bangladesh and the three other tigers here in Southeast Asia, I would also like to highlight back to Southeast Asia in general. I was surprised when I started here last year that I have seen certain transactions or project discussions where I never thought about I would see a project. To name here was Cambodia or Laos. There have been some interesting wind projects like last year, very large scale. Unfortunately, went to the Asian concurrents finally. There are still project discussions in Thailand and Philippines, and I believe Malaysia could play an interesting role in the near future in case of change of supply chain strategies. Vietnam is already benefiting of the fact of the Chinese and US conflict, and also on the supply chain effects. But Myanmar could be also the huge take-a development in this sense. And this is the impression about the market itself. I was quite active trying to reach out to clients in the market. There are certain discussions in these smaller countries. I do a lot of webinars from the Competence Center side, join the market entry program from the BMWI, the Ministry of Economics, to reach out to meet clients in the market with delegated exporters. It's quite interesting to see what happened in this region in the waste or energy sector in several fields. And yeah, we can dive in, Felix, please, to Bangladesh. Even though I haven't been there, Bangladesh is maybe one of my 3 core markets here in the region. We see in 2020 a sharp decline in transactions covered on our side. No long-term transaction, it declined. Even the short-term transaction have fallen down due to COVID. Bangladesh had a lot of issues related to COVID. A lot of projects have been delayed, especially with strict lockdowns, and yeah, governmental support is often needed in Bangladesh. It was not easy to get all the credit approvals from the government side. We see a little rebound in 2021, and we see now 60 million coverage in this year, or up to end of July. I hope it will be sustainable. From my side, from experience-wise, even if I couldn't travel, it was not easy to build up a network in the market. But finally, I would like to highlight this year that I had some breakthrough points. Thankful to the embassy of Bangladesh, who's quite active and willing to cooperate with us together. We are trying to organize in the near future certain webinars for several sectors in Bangladesh, supported by the German Business Council. There's a community for German companies and banks active in the market. And this is very helpful to reach out to interesting investors. At the moment, unfortunately, even I can't travel, but I can be virtually present in the market and try to reach out to as many companies possible. Also, I would like to highlight, in Bangladesh and in India, I was able to jointly organize a webinar with a German bank together for over 190 clients, even this year, in the market of or in the sector of infrastructure and transportation. It's still an opportunity there to reach out to people to start discussions. I see there also, I'm also this year involved in certain project discussions, especially in the textile sector or in the field of energy. Energy was in the past a very important market for us in Bangladesh. And I hope as I mentioned at the beginning, I hope the recovering, which we might see this year, is sustainable. And we will see how the COVID situation, it had its toll already in Bangladesh, especially in the very early beginning. I think it was end of May and July, and then June, they were hit quite badly because of the Delta variant. With a 0-digit vaccination ratio, and couldn't get a vaccine from India at this point. I hope the situation changed. People are still interested to discuss certain opportunities, and I would like also to highlight at this end here, if you have something in Bangladesh, I would like to team up with you to maybe strengthen your position in the market, to see that we can explain, especially investors in Bangladesh, the benefits of an ECA financing by Euler Hermes for the client side, and maybe convince them that maybe it's good to invest in Team Germany, buying the supplies out of Germany, getting the financing structure back up by the German ECA, either international or German-wise. And yes, that's my feedback from Bangladesh so far. Felix.
All right, thank you very much, Markus. I can only underline and stress that it's really worthwhile to reach out at a very early stage, discussing these projects with Markus and with us, especially when it comes to projects in Bangladesh. As some of you know, the banking market is not easy in Bangladesh. Therefore, let's discuss these transactions at a very early stage in order to put the ducks in a row there. Let's go to one of the other markets Frauke already discussed and shared her insights, which of course was extremely helpful to understand this tale of the crisis unfolding in Indonesia. We of course have seen a certain volatility. We have a steady stream of short-term business that we are able to cover. Medium and to long-term business is fairly volatile, and I can only underline what Frauke said regarding the difficulties on a legal basis. So it's not always easy to close these contracts. Many of you know that, and by giving this hint, you should also talk at a very early stage with Markus, and I will turn it over to you.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, you're right, Felix and Frauke. It's a very complicated market, but has some opportunities involved as well. Especially the beginning this year, I have to say the first half year was quite interesting, quite busy related to Indonesia. I was involved in certain project discussions. We have seen realizing smaller transaction this year, sometimes 5 to 10 million, but often also quite interesting which clients which we already know on the buyer side. They try to tend all 10 years to buy new equipment from Germany to renew the old equipment. And sure, at the moment, to be honest, the last 2 months have been also on my side very silent out of Indonesia with inquiries. It was a very busy beginning of the year, but sure, there have been very hit by COVID-19 and which high numbers of infected people and people dying. There is at the moment they're struggling, but they're reopening on a slowly base. And what I learned here in Asia is also maybe the situation at the moment is severe. It can easily and shift to a positive side again and in a very fast manner due to a high population of Indonesia. There's still a need of investment. We have to see how this turns out in the near future. There's still also interesting project discussions in the field, what we have seen: packaging, steel processing, PET processing, textile, the wood industry, and energy discussions are also on the table. It's interesting also to notice in 21 or 2020, this is not a normal figure for us on a medium long-term perspective. I think it's based on the shipping industry or transportation sector that we have seen there a major project in this area. But in general, we see numbers like of the cover volume up to 21, which is at the moment currently 105 million, and therefore 30 million are related to the medium long-term perspective. And I hope the trend is consistent in this year, but as I mentioned at the beginning, at the moment there are a lot of delays, which makes the market more complicated up to now. But still there are a lot of German business people on the ground, companies already involved in Indonesia. And also to mention what was quite interesting on the side of the Competence Center. In the beginning of this year in January, we organized a joint webinar with 3 big exporters in the healthcare sector for their clients in the market. It was the first approach that the three companies work together in Indonesia because they're contributing to each other. And right now we are following the leads and try to support the activities, and there's still the discussions are going on, and I believe there will be projects also realized this year in the healthcare sector. As Frauke mentioned, there is field of investment also on the governmental side at the moment. They're focusing also on the healthcare development. And I would like to highlight here to work with you together. I mean, I mentioned I did a webinar with a bank together, but also on the exporter side. It's often important to jointly force together. We could easily combine our knowledge together with the Chamber of Commerce in Indonesia, for example. They're welding to companies. They can invite potential clients as well. Even in these complicated times where we can't travel, there's still opportunities to talk to business organizations or legal organizations or public organizations in Indonesia. And please also at this point reach out to me. We could discuss anything together and find out if there's a way for your company as well to reach out again to your clients in Indonesia. Thank you, Felix.
All right. We jump to Vietnam, which of course Frauke already explained what the dynamic is. There we see a constant stream of short-term business. In 2018, we had a big project in the car manufacturing sector, which led sort of the medium to long-term financing skyrocket, and we hope that we will be able to find projects like this again in the near future. Yeah, Markus, you mentioned you've been there just before the COVID crisis hit us. Of course, Vietnam was in a very good position during the first wave or the first two waves. Now the picture looks more grim. What's your take on projects in Vietnam?
I think Vietnam is maybe the most interesting market at the moment. As I mentioned at the beginning, the US and the China crisis in the past years has supported their investments in the market. When I was in Vietnam, it was fascinating to see how fast developing Vietnam is. I visited also the VinFast car production line, very impressive. There are people with ideas and visions to invest in Vietnam. And you mentioned it, and Frauke also, last year they went very good through the whole COVID-19 situation. And we have been involved in, I think, at least 3 wind projects, which have to be, we will expect the financial close there soon this year, which means then in 2021, we will see the long-term transaction backed by a bank guarantee back on our statistic point of view. And also ongoing discussions are still going on. I mean, especially even in these complicated times at the moment, there are discussions in the field of energy still. So at the moment, based on solar power, for example, there's still also packaging project in place there, which could be discussed. Car manufacturing could be a topic as well. It's a still moving market, and I'm a bit optimistic to see more and maybe a sustainable trend that we don't see there only a high number of 936 million covered medium long-term related projects for one client. I have a good feeling that the market is developing in a way that long-term financing is also interesting for Vietnamese companies. And you have to keep in mind, especially in Vietnam, local banks, for example, if it's foreign investment, foreign financing in US dollar, for example, they have only availability tenors of 1 year, and they need international partners to team up for providing long-term financing. I think there's still room. We already had the last 3 weeks, we had some meetings with one of the major banks, 3 major banks in Vietnam, to build up a strong relationship, to explain them also what we can do together for their client base. And I'm a bit optimistic it will be very interesting talks for project in the future, despite the situation. And this is what I'm thinking, why I'm positive. There's still a project on the table, which sounds quite interesting. But sure, it's Southeast Asia. Can be a long run anyway. In the end, you're quite optimistic, but it can take some time to develop the project further. But Vietnam is maybe a market where a lot of companies and banks are focusing still, and also in the near and the mid future here in Southeast Asia and in Asia in general.
All right. Yeah, sales cycles, of course, in ECA financing are fairly long. Most of us, I think, know that, but I think these points need to be strongly underlined. It's not all about interest rate. Of course, we can offer through ECA financing a very attractive interest rate, but it's also about tenure and the duration of financing provided, especially in the renewable sector. And therefore, please just take into account export financing as a tool which can further diversify your refinancing base. Looking to the giant, looking at China, we have seen during the last years a steady increase in the volumes, coming mainly from short-term transactions, LC covered business, as well as open account, of course, many revolving limits that we see there, but, and that's crucial, we also see investment goods financed mid to long term. There, especially small and medium size exporters provide high tech to their Chinese counterparts, and export financing is something the Chinese are discovering for themselves in order also to diversify their refinancing base. Maybe Markus, you want to add some points to that?
I would just add here at this point, I'm focusing here in Singapore on mainly on Southeast Asia and Bangladesh, but I have the point of view of the whole Asia Pacific as well. I'm active in China too with certain webinars, and be involved in discussions about projects in China and opportunities also in this region because of the time difference. So the time I'm in, it's quite easy for people on the ground here to contact me. And you mentioned it already, China is the most important market for us, or one of the most important markets. And I think we gained a lot of experience in the past, and we see also in the midterm, long-term, from midterm, long-term perspective, also now touching projects high volume, up to 200 million. Before we have seen projects in the size of 30 to 60 million. That's quite interesting to recognize that the market is developing, and also especially last year, I think we saw so many transactions going into China, also dominating the Asian Pacific region. Still a very fascinating market, and if you have questions here too, I could be helpful also. It's not my core market, but still I'm closely linked to Euler Hermes, and we can team up together to meet your clients, to provide them a lot of information about us and what we can do in the market together. Thank you.
All right. And let's jump to the sleeping giant, India. There the picture looks not that favorable. So we have seen a certain decline of volumes. What is your take on that, Markus?
Yeah, you mentioned the decline. We can see it from 2019 to 2020 that India had a lot to do with the COVID situation, a lot of delays in projects. And the point of our midterm assessment here up to July or June 21, I think we saw a little rebound already of 380 million newly covered transactions in the market, a bit higher than the last year level, even despite the harsh times COVID-wise with the Delta variant in India. There is a high need in the market, and what was surprising for us, we have seen many new clients, not the usual subjects. We saw different investing companies interested in long-term financing as well. And also, what is our impression? The packaging sector was quite interesting in the past few months. It might be the case that the market structure has changed due to COVID, that supermarkets and delivery services are more interested in also in India, and then you need more packaging involved. But this was a huge amount of project has been related to the packaging sector, and it's still promising. And I think businesses are opening up slowly there too and steady. And I'm also personally involved. I have been involved in a webinar, as I mentioned, with one German bank for Bangladesh and India. And out of the webinar, there's certain project discussions ongoing, but on a slowly pace, but it's still ongoing. And I think you mentioned it. It's a sleeping giant, but can easily be awake as well.
All right, we hope we can wake him up together. Well, that's what we wanted to look at in terms of the market. Let's turn now to the questions that we received during the last 45 to 60 minutes. You are of course still able to ask questions, and we will be more than happy to answer them. One is a question regarding Euler Hermes' approach towards Vietnamese corporate risk. As you might know, at the moment we cover bank risks, or risk which is covered by Vietnamese banks. We of course see the demand in the market for the coverage of Vietnamese corporate risk. We are in discussions, of course, also with the federal government, but I can't give you any positive update on that. At the moment, we still require for mid to long-term business banking guarantees from a number of Vietnamese banks that we have generally accepted. One of them, of course, the State Bank of Vietnam, and the Vietnam Bank of Agriculture and Rural Development, for example, and Vietin Bank is also one of them. But as I said, discussions are ongoing. We have to see where they lead us. Then we have one question maybe for Frauke. How do you see the development in Vietnam of renewable energy? You shortly touched upon that. What do you think lies in front of us for the next, let's say, 1, 2, 3 years in terms of renewables in Vietnam?
Okay, how much time do I have? Renewables is extremely interesting. Well, let's say solar has been really interesting these last year. Problem is the feed-in tariff has been changed, and there are problems with feeding in the electricity that's being produced. So solar is a problem right now because the contracts that have to be the contracts between Electricity of Vietnam, the only institution that's allowed to take all the electricity, and the electricity producers are not good for producers, so they cannot feed in the electricity. They don't get paid even if it's EVN's fault. So there are problems with solar, but wind energy is developing extremely well at a pace we haven't seen anywhere. And now the shift is turning from onshore wind to offshore wind, near shore, but even far shore. I know there's a big German enterprise, PNE. They are working with investments of 4.8 billion right now. I think it's in Bingding. They're starting to invest here, and they want to put up wind fields of, I haven't read about this, but it's, I think 650 6,000 megawatt, so 6 gigawatt. It's huge. And they're not the only ones. Investors from Thailand are investing, Vietnamese investors generally in real estate, they go into renewable energies. So there is a lot of movement in there. It's really interesting, yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Frauke. Do you want to add to that, Markus, or?
No, I think Frauke is right, but what I see in the last couple of weeks now, also the discussion of storage, solar power energy, when you use it for your own use, highly storage demanding then for company sites. That's something what maybe is of interest in the near future too. And the energy sector has been quite interesting, especially last year, also from our perspective, but I mean all the ECAs. I've been quite active in the market too. The competition was quite high for a lot of interesting projects. And it was very good to see a Southeast Asian country developing so fast in this field of renewable energy and still continuing to do so. Yes.
All right. Thank you very much. If there are any further questions, please ask them now. Let me just quickly check whether we have any further questions that we didn't answer so far. That doesn't seem to be the case. I just want to provide you with our next online events. So that's the commercial part that you will get now. We have an event coming up on Dienstleistungsexporte, so for the services industries, which is going to be held in German. So if you speak German, if you understand German, you're wholeheartedly invited to take part in this more technical online event. Then our series Hermes cover Click and Coffee will continue with East Africa. Markus's colleague Eva from Nairobi will join us in English. We will dive into the different East African markets and will provide you with information and market intelligence. In November, we will have a Click and Coffee on the MENA region, also with our colleague in Dubai. And we're very much looking forward getting their expertise on the Middle Eastern region. So these are the next 3 events. We hope that you will join us for these events. So let me just summarize quickly what are the next steps in Southeast Asia. We of course have seen a certain dip, as Frauke indicated, but let's not hesitate. If you have projects, try to work with your clients closely, and if you need, provide them with the expertise that we provided to you today. We will be at your side, both Germany Trade and Invest, as well as Markus from the financing side at the Chamber of Commerce in Singapore, as well as your ECA here in Hamburg. So please feel free to reach out to us. We will of course also provide you with the presentation afterwards, and we will be happy to discuss your projects. So Team Germany from Germany Trade and Invest, the Chamber of Commerce abroad, as well as Euler Hermes, are there for you to support you. And I would like to thank Frauke and Markus for this online event. Thank you very much for taking the time. And thank you to all of the participants for joining us today. And we'll be happy to answer any question, support you. We are Team Germany. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.